You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Breaking news from the White House and from the President of the United States himself. Trump on Truth Social exactly 59 seconds ago. From the president, Pam Bondi is a great American patriot and a loyal friend who faithfully served as my attorney general over the past year. Pam did a tremendous job overseeing a massive crackdown in crime across our country, with murders plummeting to their lowest level since the year 1900. We love Pam, and she will be transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector to be announced at a date in the near future. And our Deputy Attorney General and a very talented and respected legal mind, Todd Blanche, will step in to serve as acting Attorney General. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump, end quote. So, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem are out. Right off the top of the bat, if you've joined us before, I called this a couple of months ago, and there is a reason why. American people want results. They do not want fancy, flashy commercials. They don't want people to show up in committee and be arguing and fist fighting and taking off the earrings and getting into big kerfluffles over failed decisions. As a reminder,
Let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
Quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr.
I don't care if they're on the right, the left, the center, the north, the south, the east, the west. People don't care for this. They don't want this. Americans want, in the actual cabinet positions, the calm, collected airline pilot. They want the quiet, disappointed parent. They do not want go in there and ragtag TV show pundit style rock'em sock'em robots. That's what my job's for. And this is not something that Pam Bondi, even going into these particular hearings, had something kind of up her sleeve to act this way in the first place. And yes, it does go back to how her office handled the release of the Epstein files all the way back to February, which at the time, my commentary on got me in a little bit of hot water. But alas, we'll cover the first and the direct news here regarding Bondi ousted officially, according to the President of the United States. Now, Fox News and CNN and the New York Times and Politico and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and several other outlets have been reporting that this was coming all morning. There are suggestions that this happened last night. The President of the United States, I, of course, reported a couple of months ago that Bondi was on thin ice because the president was unsatisfied with how he wasn't really able to talk about anything else in his administration because Attorney General Pam Bondi got into office, promised all of the Epstein files are here. They're all right. They're on my desk, a big manila folder, 15 feet tall. It's right here. And we've got them. We're going to release them. And then she brought a bunch of influencers to Washington, D.C., and trotted them all out for a little wonderful little photographic, little media row, had them all stand up and hold the binder up. Look, Ma, the binder. And then they opened the binders up and found out a ton of stuff that we already had. And then what did Pam Bondi say? Well, hey, we're trying our best, but that's not no, she blamed it on Kash Patel, who then blamed it back on her. And everything from that point forward was a string of news updates that were a lot of things that Pam Bondi was accomplishing that wasn't getting media attention because she was also doing a series of things that were not popular to American people, like a bunch of prosecutions the Trump administration wanted brought forward that Pam Bondi couldn't seem to get across the door. And this has been a frustration with a lot of people in the administration and outside of the administration for both Trump's first and now second terms. You have an attorney general. They are presiding in the office of attorney general, confirmed by the Senate. And you have the rest of the country going, quote, for the love of God, arrest somebody, end quote. How many times now have we relayed news to you about a number of referrals to the Department of Justice from Congress? For example, where we're talking about John Brennan, former head of the CIA, whether we're talking about James Comey, whether we're talking about individuals who have been referred to the Department of Justice based on a series of crimes they've allegedly committed, and we can't even get grand jury indictments across the finish line. We can't even get Letitia James, whose mortgage documents look more dubious than a Ketanji Brown Jackson Supreme Court decision. We can't even get her over the line. What's going on here? There is a lot of frustration on this. Now, Peter Doocy, outside the White House for Fox, reporting earlier today not only Pam Bondi out, but on Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, being moved to that head position here.
Kaylee, I just got off the phone with President Trump. We have a big scoop. Pam Bondi will soon leave her job as the Attorney General. She is going to get a different job within the administration. It doesn't sound like there is any bad blood between her and President Trump, but it does seem like they want her to go and do something else. And in an interim role, she will be replaced by Todd Blanche, who is currently her deputy at the Justice Department. So it doesn't sound like Blanche is being elevated long-term to the Attorney General. There might be somebody else that the president wants to go in there. But President Trump soon will announce to the entire world that it is the end of Pam Bondi's time as the Attorney General.
Now, of course, that it then followed by the Truth Social post a couple of minutes later. Now, I do want to make this particularly clear because there's a lot of speculation flying around about what was the final issue here, what was the last straw. I believe that the last straw is that in the midst of all of these legal maneuvers, there has yet to be a singular and effective line of press release communication, of public relations from the Department of Justice. Say what you will, that's very, very important in today's day and age. And when you have a Department of Justice that cannot get prosecutions across the line, again, yes, she has done an excellent job of helping to crack down on crime across the country. Of course, the Department of Justice has worked with the FBI to tackle a record number of child traffickers, to tackle a record number of confirmed pedophiles and child pornography distributors and drug traffickers and human traffickers in general. That has been an excellent work from this Department of Justice. But what was the key sin? What was the big issue for Pam Bondi with this president? She overpromised and she underdelivered. She overpromised and she underdelivered, just like Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi would get out and they would want to be podium Barbie. I'm sorry, that may not be popular. It's the truth. They would get out there and they would go, this president wants to do things and stuff, and then would expect the crowd to just start clapping. Only here's the problem. If you don't bring forward the stuff, the receipts, you don't bring a CVS style receipts of all of the things you're promising, the American people who were excited about seeing you come into office get a little bit salty, and they're justified to do so. When you say, we're dropping the Epstein files February 15th, boys and girls, boom, here you go. And it turns out there's less in there than Lay's bag of chips. Well, then that's kind of disappointing to the American people. All of the things that you promised going in, and Kash Patel had the same problem going in. Oh, we're going to get in there and we're going to release everything and we're going to do all this stuff day one, baby. And then you don't do that. Well, guess what? You made all the promises. Now you are answerable to them. Democrats ran into the same thing with Joe Biden, and it's something the Trump administration doesn't want to stomach. Now, the straw that broke the back with Kristi Noem is that she walked into a congressional committee and looked right into the face of Senator Kennedy from Louisiana when he asked her point blank, did you authorize a hundreds of millions of dollar ad campaign of you riding around on horseback, and did the president see it and approve it? She looked at him and said, well, of course it was approved. Everything was fine. It was all approved. That was enough for the president of the United States. And she was sideways promoted out of office. Now, to the special ambassador to the Shield of the Americas and things like that, because obviously, Kristi Noem had been loyal, but Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski were causing a lot of problems among those who knew what they were doing in the Department of Homeland Security. Pam Bondi was very disliked inside the administration. When I reported a couple of months ago that Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem were on thin ice, and I know because that clip was taken and pushed around a bunch of media left, right, and center, I was not just reporting random speculation. Inside the administration, when Trump goes around the big, huge Last Supper style table to the different members of the administration and says, what have you been doing for the American people? And you have Vice President J.D. Vance taking on stuff saying, yeah, we're tackling fraud, Mr. President. And then you go to Secretary of State and National Security Advisor and Emperor of Venezuela and future Supreme Leader of Iran and Chief Capital Architect and probably the future Attorney General Marco Rubio, and he starts listing things like he's ticking his fingers through the Rolodex. You get to Pam Bondi, what are you doing? And she would kind of stutter and stall and just say, yeah, we're doing lots of really good things. Nope. Not useful, not helpful for the American people. Now, I've heard some criticism so far of Todd Blanche, and we'll have to see. So far, when I have seen Todd Blanche in committee, he does a couple of things that are to the president's favor. Thing number one, he waits, and he doesn't get into pithy back and forth style media slapfests. He doesn't do that. You say, well, that's a really low bar to clear. You'd think. You would think. But whether it's Jasmine Crockett or Karine Jean-Pierre, or whether on the Trump side of the aisle it's Kristi Noem, or whether it's Pam Bondi in this case, Americans really don't want the taking off the earrings and then getting into the supermarket checkout line slap fight. They're not interested in this. They want results. So far, you've noticed Secretary of Homeland Security, now confirmed, Markwayne Mullin, former senator of Oklahoma, has made it particularly clear that he's not going to get in a bunch of the nonsensical fist fight, goofy, goober nonsense that Americans are tired of. Yeah, I mean, I would make the case. I would make the case that what Americans are looking for are these kinds of results. So moving forward, how is this going to affect the Trump administration in a midterm year? So two things. First of all, a bit of chaos in the Trump administration with staffing has been baked into the cake at this point. You're going to hear a lot of pundits come out of the woodwork and are going to suggest to you, hey, Pam Bondi, she's out. This means everything is chaos. Everything is up in the air. No one knows what's going on. No, I don't believe that's the case. I think that right now Americans do believe that a little bit of chaos in the Trump administration is to be expected. Just kind of the name of the game when the executive administration, the executive branch of government, has as much outsized power as it does, and it's fistfighting with the judicial branch every single day of the week. Yeah, you're going to have those kinds of tizzies and fights and issues. On the second side of things, what does this mean? Well, depending on who becomes the next Attorney General of the United States, you might see a different series of policies and responses to three key areas. Key area number one, going after those in prosecutions for already aggravated crimes against the American people that by and large Americans are deeply tired of. Whether we're talking about the scandals from the end of the Obama administration, whether we're talking about Judge James Boasberg of the Washington, D.C. District Court and illegally spying on senators of the United States and telling Verizon and AT&T they're not even allowed to tell senators that they're being wiretapped. Whether we look at that, that'd be the first key area. How are they going to handle prosecutions? Number two, how are they going to handle federal judges that issue all of these last minute freezes and stays and injunctions and conjunction, what's your function kind of things that are unconstitutional? The Attorney General carries an outsized amount of responsibility in the administration's response to federal judicials and their decisions. And so far, Pam Bondi has tried to let the federal judges kind of do whatever it is they want. We haven't really seen the kind of Andrew Jacksonian style of leadership from the president, where he says, I know this judge has made their decision, now let them enforce it. That is an open question to see, again, how the next Attorney General, acting or long-term, acting or confirmed, is going to carry out the United States executive's relationship with the United States judicial. That's going to matter coming up into the midterms and over the next year. Last but not least, it's all about the PR. It's all about the PR. How this next Attorney General addresses the American people matters a lot. Since before World War II, PR has been the unspoken fourth or fifth branch of government. The fourth branch being the bureaucracy, kind of the joke there. The fifth branch of the government is PR. How you communicate to the American people, it matters. Because these become the definitive statements that will be screenshots and Facebook posts throughout the rest of the administration's lifespan. And then from then on and into the future. And so how Todd Blanche comes in and makes statements, every single word brought before the American people, every single video, every single allegation, every single investigation, and the fruition of it, whether we see indictments, whether we see things brought before judges that are slapped down, whether we see things brought before the Supreme Court of the United States. Obviously, we know we've been talking about birthright citizenship in the case of the Solicitor General Sauer yesterday. These things are going to be laid on Todd Blanche's shoulders and whoever replaces him. It's not going to be Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is still getting over soliciting a girl for sex over braces who is homeless. He's busy losing his mind on various networks that'll have him. Is it going to be Pirro? we'll see. I mean, that name's been floated quite a bit. I'm not sure that we have any indication on long-term leverage yet. Politico, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Fox News, and several of the minor outlets on the right following all seem to have different sources suggesting different individuals. So that just leaves you with the speculation station over on that one. Checking in with my team on one really quick thing here. Again, welcome to those who are joining us on the Tony Kinnett Cast, this little impromptu afternoon broadcast. Normally we're on at 7 p.m. Eastern weekdays. Again, the news of the hour is that Attorney General Pam Bondi, who has been canned by the President of the United States, removed to a job in the private sector. Not surprising. Now, this would be according to the Daily Mail, the United Kingdom, so take this with an outsized grain of salt. According to Philip Nieto, Trump reportedly told Pam Bondi shortly before his Iran speech last night that she would soon be fired. And according to the Daily Mail, and again, sometimes they have some interesting insider reporting, like Kristi Noem's fake boobs husband, or sometimes they report false information or frame it incorrectly regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation. So again, take this with a grain of salt. This is just from the Daily Mail framing this now. He suggests Trump's reasoning for the sudden dismissal comes in part because President Trump believes Bondi may have tipped off Eric Swalwell about the FBI's efforts to release documents related to Swalwell's relationship with Christine Fang, or Fang Fang. Now, if that's true, that little final straw that Bondi might have leaked something to Eric Swalwell about his relationship with the Chinese spy before releasing those documents to the American people, or that Bondi had leaked those things in general and therefore caused maybe a privacy violation. Like with Kristi Noem, there are some mistakes that are supposed to be made with presidential authorization that if Bondi is doing in the president's name, or Kristi Noem did in the president's name, Trump doesn't like this. I go again to the golden rule of Donald Trump. The goldest rule of all, etched in every Trump letter on every Trump tower. You don't speak for me. You don't speak for the president of the United States. That is one of the biggest rules. If you want a great way to be fired, if you're Corey Lewandowski, fired multiple times by President Trump, try speaking for him. Try saying that you are going to do something without his personal and clear authorization. That will get you slapped right in the face, glove off, butler to the face at a fancy event style by the President of the United States. He doesn't care for that. So if what the Daily Mail is alleging here is true, that Trump doesn't like that Bondi went and leaked a bunch of stuff about Eric Swalwell's, again, Eric Swalwell, a detestable human being, again, stupid enough to have a relationship with a Chinese spy, and also quite an idiot in and of himself. You don't need to be giving him political capital. You don't need to be giving him a cheap political victory here by the Department of Justice erroneously and incorrectly leaking information about his relationship with Fang Fang in a manner that might reveal either national security secrets or might release something that would then leave a paper trail to be slapping the Department of Justice with later. It's not useful. We're a little busy right now. And so again, moving forward, I just don't see anything that Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem could have done that would have kept them in the administration, given the last couple of actions that they have taken in the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security offices. Now, again, I'm going to say very kindly, those who are suggesting to they've been sideways promoted and not fired, Don't do that. Stop. The President of the United States doesn't like it when people do extra dumb things, like speaking for himself. Now, again, he can thank her for being a loyal patriot. Of course, it's fine. I think that's, not exactly I don't think that's personally a very bad thing, for sure. But the idea that this is like somehow a very magically great thing for Pam Bondi, I don't think so, Chief. So moving on from that side of things, I will take a couple of questions. So first of all, from one of the comments, I am to the Walrus. What took so freaking long? Great question. And the answer to that is that Trump has been annoyed with a lack of performance. He doesn't often fire for a lack of performance, though. So you can be aggressively mediocre And the Trump administration is not likely to can you because there's other stuff going on. I don't really have time to focus on the lukewarm stuff. And you've seen this in your own workplaces, right? The person who's just kind of doing middle of the road, okay, they're probably not going to get fired. But that does put them right on deck, right? Almost at bat for doing really dumb things and it being noticed. Now, let's take yours truly. If I'm being the golden boy over at the Daily Signal and I'm delivering excellent things and I make a boo-boo, I'm going to get a call from my boss, Rob Bluey, and he's going to say, Tony, that was really stupid. Think about what you've done. And I'm going to, of course, apologize for being stupid. However, if you're an aggressively mediocre member of the team, thankfully at the Daily Signal, we don't have any. Everyone really pulls their weight. But if we had mediocre members of the Daily Signal and they were hot garbage on delivering things, and then they did the extra big stupids, well, all of a sudden, you have reasons not to keep you around and reasons to keep you around. And if the reasons to keep you around are all of a sudden very small against the reasons to get rid of you, that would be why it took so long to get rid of Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi finally, it appears, according to this alleged report, did something Kristi Noem style, doing something without presidential authorization, doing something needlessly stupid at a time when the country is really paying attention to what the president of the United States is doing and saying, like the Operation Epic Fury, for instance. That would be the big reason why. So we're going to cut over to one of those things on the president of the United States and the stuff that he is focusing on, at least as opposed to yesterday. But over on that side of things, I will take a couple of quick notes really, really quickly from the comment section. From Kevin Stankiewicz, $2 super chat, very kind of you. Governor Ron DeSantis is Attorney General in January? Nope, I don't think so. I don't see that happening. Now, I guess with the Florida election over, maybe I would doubt it. I would doubt it. If Trump ends up choosing DeSantis, would that be a wise political move? Maybe. I mean, I think that DeSantis isn't necessarily great at campaigning, but he is a stellar governor. And because he governs in a very precise, clear, professional way, that would be good transferring over as an attorney general. I think Trump wants an attack dog, though. He just wants an attack dog with results. Mike Davis for the new attorney general from Holly Medici. I believe we're talking about the same Mike Davis over at the Article 3 project, unless I'm thinking of the wrong guy. Yeah, no, the attorney over at the Article 3 project. Phenomenal guy. He is the former chief counsel for nominations in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Was a law clerk for Justice Gorsuch. I think Mike Davis would make a pretty decent suggestion, but I would almost see him as perhaps an attorney in the manner that Jeanine Pirro is, as a prosecutor, rather than seeing him as the attorney general itself. Not because I don't think Mike Davis wouldn't do an excellent job. I just think that right now there is kind of that hierarchy of those already in the administration that are leaning for the positions, or maybe a senator. Because God knows that the only reason people serve in the United States Senate is either to run for president or to be picked for some type of position in the future. So that side of things, I do want to cut over to one of the things that really got Attorney General Pam Bondi in hot water, and that is without a doubt. I want to make this clear. Without a doubt, it definitely comes down to the president attempting last night to talk about the Iran Operation Epic Fury to the American people. And when this is the stuff he's trying to communicate and you're a distraction from it, that might be a bit of a problem. Here's the president last night.
We are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait. and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it.
Now, the President of the United States addressing the American people last night, something I was planning on covering in the 7 p.m. show, and still will. But at least for this right now, I want to say, what does this have to do with Pam Bondi? Right now, Trump is in a position where he needs serious adults acting like serious people all the time, who are offering and delivering. That's what he needs. And when you're looking at Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, when you're looking at Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, among other roles, when you are looking at Chris Wright, when you are looking at Sean Duffy, Vice President J.D. Vance has recently toned down kind of the more personal, kind of Midwesterner style rhetoric. The president needs calm, cool, collected adults. He needs ladies in the administration like Susie Wiles and Tulsi Gabbard. Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem, not useful. That's a kind of a constant annoyance to the president. Brooke Rollins is also an excellent example of an administrative head, again, in this case of the Department of Agriculture, who comes to the table, says what she's doing, clear, consistent, not a lot of extra stuff, not like a lot of sycophancy. And the president of the United States has an ego. He'll be one of the first to tell you that. And yeah, of course he likes people saying nice things about them, but if that's all you're saying, if he's like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, well, everything's great, Mr. President, because you're really great, Mr. President. Isn't he great, Mr. President? Isn't he just wonderful? Yay! He doesn't have time for that right now. There's stuff going on. Now, one of the comments asking, what did Pam Bondi do specifically? What did she do specifically? I'm sorry, I got a comment from Jane that says, why don't we just bring back Chuck Norris? That's good. I like that. That's good. That's a really good comment. Regarding Bondi, what did she do specifically? At this point, we do not know for sure. And that's why when you've heard me relaying these reports, I've been very clear and very explicit about the speculation coming from reports from, for example, the Daily Mail, suggesting that the president had talked with her and that he didn't like how poorly Pam Bondi was handling either an investigation into Eric Swalwell regarding Fang Fang, or whether that she had maybe leaked bits of information privately in personal communication, or what she thought was personal communication, on what it was that perhaps private details about the Chinese spy that dated Representative Eric Swalwell. President doesn't have time for that. That appears to be maybe the only smoking gun that we have. But again, I'm being very, very clear to you. While that is the only likely speculative information we have that appears to follow pattern and point, that isn't a guarantee. And don't walk away from here. Look, I'm never going to claim to be all-knowing, and I am never going to tell you something for sure that I do not know for sure. Because otherwise, what reason would you have to tune in? My devilishly handsome good looks? I don't think so. So the president of the United States has some things to argue to the American people. And in order to bring that forward, he needs the American people to have a selection in the administration that isn't going to make a bunch of promises and not deliver. Because when the president of the United States then follows up by saying, hey, American people, I need you to trust me on this. In case you were wondering, last night, that's what the president of the United States did. He tried to sell the last couple of weeks of Operation Epic Fury to the American people. As Hugh Hewitt put it, formerly of the Washington Post until he was kicked out for being a conservative. Hugh Hewitt, excellent show, excellent coverage. He made the case that the president of the United States last night, in trying to sell the plan of the end of the Operation Epic Fury to the American people, both to those who have agreed with the effort so far and those who haven't agreed with the effort so far, in trying to communicate effectively the situation to the international market, in calling on NATO to actually be useful for once. And then, of course, the president of the United States issuing a final warning to Iran, and what left there is, if he's making things like, I need you to trust me. I know before a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of weird to hear me say, let me cook. Let me do this. I've seen it. I know what I'm doing. Let me do it. You kind of need the rest of the administration to be doing things to which American people would go, yeah, all right, sure, why not? As a Midwesterner, You know how obsessed I am with the scoreboard. And if the president of the United States is going to say, I need you to trust me, look at my past record. And then people say, well, you know, your attorney general promised me the moon. Why haven't you got me the moon? You promised me all of the files. You promised me all of these arrests. You promised me justice. And I haven't gotten it, Mr. President. Why is Pam Bondi promising me the moon? At some point, the president of the United States is going to go, you know, you're right. Why is she promising you the moon? In fact, I don't even think Pam Bondi could hug the moon. What's going on with Pam? Well, I mean, you know, there's a little of that makes sense just kind of on the common sense recognition that we all do understand. And there are going to be a lot of people that are overthinking this. Don't do that. You don't need to do mental gymnastics for this. Kristi Noem got in as the Secretary of Homeland Security, and she made it all about her. She went down to El Salvador and said, all right, line up all the prisoners. Hey guys, I'm Kristi Noem. Look, all the prisoners, they're behind me. And not even those who've been deported from the United States. Just any old people they could find that looked kind of dangerous and were bald in CCOT. Did a little photo shoot and then took a big American expense paid trip to ride horseback so that you could see how great she looked in jeans on a horse. No, that's not effective. Same with Pam Bondi. She got in, she made all these promises, and she did the sycophancy tour. The president didn't care for it. The president, in saying, hey, they're still really great, and I like it, and I like them, that's just professional courtesy from your boss after it's time to give you the old sunset. They're really great, but I'm also putting them in a radio tower in Alaska. I mean, that's how Trump does things, boys, girls, and squirrels. So, moving forward, I'm seeing a lot of other, suggestions. I'm gonna level with you. I think that this was again expected. I'm glad that you guys have tuned in for a little bit of this breaking coverage. Has been good to join you for half an hour here. We will be back tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern for another roundup of the day's news. But I did tell you, I made a promise that as soon as we would get the news about Pam Bondi, just like with Kristi Noem, I would go live to you about it because I predicted that Pam Bondi and Noem were going to be out by the end of the year. And you'll have to forgive the smile on my face for calling this one correctly. So guys, take care. Have a wonderful afternoon. Try not to do anything stupid that gets you fired. Hey, little pro tip there for you. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. See you tonight at 7.